Before the storm breaks and the midnight phone rings, welcome back to the channel where one call can change everything. If stories of danger, destiny, and unexpected family keep you watching till the end, like this video, share it with someone who loves emotional twists. Comment your thoughts as the story unfolds, and subscribe, because every storm has a reason, and every reason has a story. Now listen closely, because tonight, a Mafia boss answers a call that will rewrite his life forever. The phone rang at 11:47 p.m., and Marcus Valente knew immediately something was wrong. His daughter never called this late. Sofia was supposed to be asleep, tucked safely in her bed at the estate with 3 armed guards stationed outside her room and another 5 patrolling the grounds. But the number flashing on his screen belonged to his head of security, and the man's voice came through in jagged fragments. "Sir, we can't, she's gone." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Everything in his office seemed to stop moving. The crystal tumbler in his hand, half filled with whiskey, suddenly weighed nothing at all. "Say that again." His voice dropped to something quiet and deadly. "Sofia's missing. We don't know how long. 20 minutes, maybe 30. The window in her room." He didn't wait for the rest. The glass shattered against the wall as Marcus grabbed his keys and jacket, already moving. His mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Rival families. Revenge plots. Kidnapping rings. His world was built on violence and power, and everyone knew the fastest way to destroy a man like him was through his child. Outside, rain hammered the streets of the city. Thunder rolled overhead, shaking windows. Marcus drove like a demon possessed, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, phone pressed to his ear as he barked orders to every soldier he had. "Find her. I want every street covered, every alley searched. Call in every favor we have." But even as his people mobilized, even as he coordinated a small army to tear the city apart, one thought kept circling through his mind: Sofia was 7 years old. She was terrified of storms. And she was out there alone. For miles away, Serena Blake was wiping down the last table at Rosie's diner when she heard the bell above the door chime. She glanced up, ready to tell whoever it was that they were closed, but the words died in her throat. A little girl stood in the doorway, soaked to the bone. Her pink dress clung to her small frame, and her dark hair was plastered to her face. She was shaking, whether from cold or fear, Serena couldn't tell. Maybe both. "Sweetie?" Serena dropped the rag and moved toward her. "Are you okay?" The child's eyes were huge and dark, filled with terror that no kid should ever know. She looked behind her, out into the storm, like she expected something to come crashing through the door any second. "Please." Her voice was so small Serena almost missed it. "They're coming." Every instinct in Serena's body went on high alert. She'd seen enough trouble in her 28 years to recognize it when it walked through her door. Without thinking, she scooped the child up and locked the entrance, flipping the deadbolt and pulling down the shade. "Who's coming, honey?" Serena carried her toward the back, away from the windows. "Where are your parents?" "I don't know." Tears mixed with rain on the girl's face. "I ran. They were in the house and I ran." Serena's heart hammered. This wasn't some kid who'd wandered away from mom and dad at the grocery store. This was something else. Something dangerous. She grabbed a clean apron from the back and wrapped it around the shivering child, then knelt down to her level. "Okay, listen to me. You're safe here. I promise. What's your name?" "Sofia." "Sofia. That's a beautiful name." Serena forced her voice to stay calm even though her mind was racing. "I'm Serena. Can you tell me what happened? I heard them talking. Downstairs." Sofia's breath came in short gasps. "Bad men. They said they were going to take me when everyone was asleep." Ice shot through Serena's veins. "The men, were they in your house? Do you know who they were?" Sofia shook her head frantically. "I climbed out my window. There's a tree. Daddy always said never to climb it, but I did, and I ran, and I didn't know where to go." "You did exactly right." Serena pulled the girl close, feeling her violent trembling. "You were so brave. So smart." But even as she said it, Serena's mind was working through the implications. If someone was after this child specifically, they wouldn't just give up. They'd search. And a diner on a lonely stretch of road with lights still on would be an obvious place to look. She needed to call the police. She needed to get this kid to safety. But something in Sophia's terror made her hesitate. The girl hadn't asked for the police. She'd asked for help against them, like the authorities weren't an option. Serena had grown up in foster care. She knew what it felt like when the people who were supposed to protect you were the very ones you couldn't trust. Sophia, I need you to tell me something. Is your daddy a good man? Does he take care of you? The change in the child's face was immediate. Despite her fear, despite everything, her eyes lit up. He's the best daddy in the whole world. He makes me breakfast and reads me stories, and he promised he'd always keep me safe. Relief flooded through Serena. Okay. Then we need to find him. Do you know his phone number? Sophia nodded, rattling off a string of digits. Serena grabbed her cell phone with shaking hands and dialed. It rang once. Who is this? The voice that answered was pure steel wrapped in barely controlled fury. My name is Serena. I'm at Rosie's Diner on Highway 47. She kept her voice steady. I have your daughter. She's safe. The sound that came through the phone wasn't quite human, relief and rage and desperation all mixed into something primal. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming right now. The line went dead. Serena looked down at Sophia, who was watching her with those impossibly large eyes, and realized she'd just stepped into something far bigger than she understood. But the kid was safe. That was all that mattered right now. Outside, lightning split the sky. Inside, they waited. And somewhere in the city, Marcus Valente drove like hell itself was chasing him, his heart hammering one word over and over, alive, alive, alive. Marcus broke every traffic law in existence getting to that diner. Red lights meant nothing. Stop signs didn't exist. His Mercedes tore through the rain-slicked streets at speeds that would have gotten anyone else arrested, but the two patrol cars that spotted him suddenly had urgent business elsewhere. Power had its privileges, even at midnight in the middle of a storm. 17 minutes. That's how long it took him to cross the city. 17 minutes of pure hell, imagining every worst-case scenario, fighting the urge to call that number back just to hear confirmation that Sophia was still breathing. The diner appeared through the downpour like a beacon. Its neon sign flickered, Rosie's, in faded pink letters, and only 2 lights were on inside. Marcus didn't bother parking properly. He abandoned the car at an angle across 3 spots and ran for the door. Locked. Open up. His fist hammered against the glass. It's me. I'm her father. Movement inside. A woman appeared, young, maybe late 20s, with dark circles under her eyes and flour stains on her uniform. She studied him through the window with an expression that was equal parts cautious and protective. Smart. She wasn't just opening the door for any man who claimed to be someone's father. Prove it, she called through the glass. Marcus fumbled for his wallet, hands shaking in a way they never did during business negotiations or territory disputes. He pressed his driver's license against the window. Marcus Anthony Valente. Then a photo from his wallet, him and Sophia at her 7th birthday party, her gap-toothed smile as she blew out candles. The deadbolt clicked. The door opened 6 inches, and then Sophia was there, pushing past the woman's legs, and Marcus dropped to his knees as his daughter crashed into him. Daddy. He wrapped his arms around her so tightly she squeaked, but he couldn't let go. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything except hold this small, perfect human who meant more to him than his own life. She was soaked and shivering and alive, and nothing else in the entire world mattered. I've got you. His voice cracked. I've got you, baby. You're safe. Sophia sobbed into his shoulder, her small hands fisting in his jacket. There were bad men, Daddy. In our house. I heard them talking about taking me. Marcus's blood went cold all over again, but he kept his voice calm. Did you see them? Can you tell me what they looked like? She shook her head against his chest. It was dark. I was scared. So I climbed out like you taught me for emergencies and I ran. Pride mixed with terror in his chest. He'd spent 2 years teaching her escape routes, making games out of emergency preparedness, hoping she'd never need any of it. And tonight, those lessons had saved her life. You did perfect. He kissed the top of her head. So perfect. I'm so proud of you. Only then did Marcus look up at the woman who'd protected his daughter. She stood a few feet back, giving them space, her arms wrapped around herself like she was the one who needed protection. Up close, she was prettier than he'd first registered, not the polished beauty of the women in his world, but something real. Exhausted. Honest. And she'd kept Sophia safe when he couldn't. Thank you. The words felt inadequate. I don't know how to, thank you doesn't even begin. She needed help. Serena's voice was quiet but steady. Anyone would have done the same. No. Marcus stood slowly, Sophia still clinging to him. They wouldn't have. Most people would have called the cops and waited. You kept her safe. You called me. A slight flush colored her cheeks. She said her daddy was a good man. I figured he'd want to know. Something twisted in Marcus's chest at how simply she said it. Like trusting a 7-year-old's judgment about her father was the most natural thing in the world. In his world, trust was currency. Information was power. And nobody did anything without calculating the angle. But this woman had opened her door to a terrified child in the middle of the night and asked for nothing in return. What's your name? He asked. Serena. Serena Blake. Marcus Valente. He shifted Sophia's weight. I owe you a debt. Something flickered across Serena's face, recognition, maybe, or fear, or both. The name Valente carried weight in the city. Everyone knew who he was, even if they didn't know exactly what he did. You don't owe me anything. She took a step back. Just take care of her. But Marcus wasn't letting this go. Couldn't. This woman had saved the most precious thing in his life. I'm serious. Anything you need. Anything at all. Serena's laugh was sharp and tired. Thanks, but I'm good. She wasn't good. Marcus could see it in the way her uniform hung loose on her frame, in the shadows under her eyes, in the exhaustion that radiated from her like heat. She was running on empty, and she'd still found the strength to protect his daughter. Daddy, I'm cold. Sophia's voice was small against his chest. Let's get you home, sweetheart. Marcus looked at Serena one more time. I mean it. If you ever need anything, I know where to find you. She moved to open the door for them. Get her warm. Get her safe. Marcus carried Sophia out into the rain, but he looked back once before reaching his car. Serena stood in the doorway, backlit by the diner's fluorescent lights, watching them leave. Something about the image stuck with him, this woman who'd asked for nothing, standing alone in a diner in the middle of nowhere at midnight. He made a mental note of the name. Rosie's Diner. Highway 47. As he buckled Sophia into the passenger seat and cranked the heat, his phone buzzed with messages from his security team. They'd found evidence of a break-in at the estate. 3 men, professionals, hired by someone who wanted to send him a message. They'd failed tonight. But Marcus knew they'd try again. And now, because of a twist of fate and a kind waitress, they'd also created a new vulnerability he hadn't anticipated. Because Marcus Valente never forgot a debt. And he always paid what he owed. Serena locked the diner door behind them and leaned against it, her hands shaking. What the hell had she just done? Marcus Valente. She knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name, even if they pretended not to. He owned half the waterfront, had connections that ran deeper than the harbor, and people whispered about him in the same breath they used for prayers, hoping he'd never notice them. And she just called him. Invited him to her workplace. Put herself directly in his line of sight. Stupid, she muttered, pushing off the door. So stupid. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was that little girl's terrified face. Sophia. 7 years old and running for her life in the middle of a thunderstorm. What kind of person would have done anything different? Lena grabbed her purse from under the counter and killed the lights. Her apartment was a 20-minute walk from here, she couldn't afford a car, not on diner wages, and the storm had finally started to ease up. Just a steady drizzle now instead of the earlier deluge. The walk home was quiet. Too quiet. Every shadow seemed to hide something. Every sound made her jump. You're being paranoid, she told herself. Nobody knows you were involved. Nobody cares about a random waitress. But the fear followed her all the way up the 3 flights of stairs to her studio apartment, through the door with the lock that barely worked, into the space that was barely larger than a storage closet. Home sweet home. Lena dropped her purse on the counter and stared at the shoebox she called a kitchen. One burner worked on the stove. The fridge hummed like it was dying. Water damage stained the ceiling in the corner, forming patterns that looked like continents she'd never visit. She'd been saving for 2 years to get out of this place. 2 years of double shifts and skipped meals, and she still didn't have enough for first and last month's rent somewhere decent. But tonight, standing in her crappy apartment with water dripping from her hair onto the warped linoleum, Lena didn't regret a single choice that had led her here. That kid was safe. That's what mattered. She peeled off her wet uniform and fell into bed without bothering to shower. Sleep came hard. When it finally did, she dreamed of little girls running through storms and men with cold eyes following close behind. 3 days passed before she saw Adriano Moretti again. Lena was in the middle of the lunch rush, balancing 4 plates on her arms and trying to remember if table 6 wanted ranch or honey mustard, when the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up out of habit. Adriano stood in the entrance, and this time he wasn't soaked or panicked. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months, and heads turned as he walked in. People recognized power when they saw it, even if they couldn't name it. Lena's heart kicked into overdrive. He scanned the diner until his eyes found hers, and then he headed straight for the counter. She delivered her plates on autopilot, smiled at customers without hearing what they said, and met him by the register. "Mr. Valente." She kept her voice neutral. "Professional. Can I get you something? Coffee. And 5 minutes of your time." It wasn't a request, not really, but he said it politely enough. Lena poured him a cup, black, she guessed, and nodded toward an empty booth in the back. "I'm working. I can wait." Her boss, Hank, was watching from the kitchen with obvious interest. Great. Just what she needed, rumors about why Adriano Moretti was hanging around the diner asking for her specifically. Fine. 5 minutes. Lena led him to the booth. "But that's it. I've got tables." Adriano slid into the seat with the kind of grace that came from always being the most dangerous person in any room. He didn't touch the coffee. Just looked at her with those dark, intense eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense she had. "How's Sophia?" Lena asked before he could speak. Something softened in his expression. "Safe. Home. Thanks to you." "Good." She started to stand. "Then we're." "Sit. Please." The "please" surprised her enough that she stayed. Adriano reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He set it on the table between them. "I told you I owed you a debt." Lena didn't touch it. "I don't want your money. It's not charity. It's gratitude." "Same thing." "No." His voice was firm. "It's not. You saved my daughter's life. You asked for nothing. You didn't know who I was, didn't know if you'd be compensated. You just helped because she needed help." Heat crept up Lena's neck. "Anyone would've." "Don't." Adriano leaned forward. "Don't minimize what you did. I've spent 20 years in a world where everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. You didn't. That's rare. That's worth acknowledging." Lena stared at the envelope. Part of her wanted to throw it back in his face. She didn't need his guilt money, didn't want to be another problem he could solve with cash. But another part of her, the part that was exhausted from working 60-hour weeks, from choosing between electricity and groceries, from living in a place where the heat barely worked, that part was screaming at her to take it. "How much?" she asked quietly. "Enough to make a difference." That could mean anything. Lena's hands trembled as she reached for the envelope. She didn't open it. Couldn't. Not with him watching. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me." Adriano stood. "You earned it. But there's something else." Of course there was. Nothing came free, especially not from men like him. "What?" "Those men who broke into my house. The ones who were after Sophia." His jaw tightened. "They're still out there. And now they know someone helped her. Someone called me." Ice flooded Lena's veins. "You think they'll come after me? I think you should be careful." Adriano pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "My private number. If you see anything suspicious, anyone following you, you call me immediately." Lena looked at the card. Heavy stock. Embossed. "Just a name and number. I can take care of myself." "I'm sure you can." Adriano headed for the door, then paused. "But you shouldn't have to. Not because you did the right thing." He left before she could respond. Lena sat there for a long moment, the envelope in one hand and his card in the other, and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. Lena waited until her shift ended before opening the envelope. She sat in the employee bathroom, the only place with a lock that actually worked, and pulled out the contents with shaking fingers. $10,000. Cash. $100 bills bound in neat stacks. She counted it 3 times, unable to believe what she was seeing. $10,000. That was 8 months of rent. A deposit on a decent apartment. A working car. Food that didn't come from the day-old discount shelf. Freedom. Tears blurred her vision. She pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes, refusing to cry over money, over the fact that one night of doing what any decent human would do had just changed her entire life. But the tears came anyway. Adriano didn't expect to hear from her again. He'd given her the money and his number, done what honor demanded, and figured that would be the end of it. People like Lena Carter, good people who wanted nothing to do with his world, they usually disappeared the second they could. Smart of them. So when his private line rang 6 days later and her name appeared on the screen, something unexpected moved through his chest. Lena. He answered on the second ring. Everything okay? I don't know. Her voice was tight. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but there's a car that's been parked outside my building for 2 days. Black sedan. Tinted windows. It wasn't there before. Adriano was already moving toward his office door. What's your address? She rattled it off. East Side. Bad neighborhood. The kind of place where landlords ignored building codes and nobody asked questions. Stay inside. Lock your doors. I'm sending someone. Wait, I didn't call so you'd. Lena. He kept his voice calm. You were right to call. Let me handle this. Silence on the other end. Then, okay. Adriano hung up and made 2 calls. The first was to his head of security. The second was to a man who specialized in making problems disappear. 20 minutes later, his phone buzzed with a photo. The black sedan. License plate clearly visible. 2 men in the front seat, one with a telephoto camera aimed at a 3rd-floor window. Lena's window. Rage, cold and sharp, cut through him. These bastards were watching her. Waiting for an opportunity. And they would have taken it eventually, followed her to work, caught her alone, made her tell them everything she knew about that night. Then they would have killed her. Adriano forwarded the photo to his contact at the police department. Within an hour, the sedan was pulled over for a broken taillight. The men inside had outstanding warrants. They'd be detained for questioning, and by the time anyone thought to release them, Adriano would know exactly who'd hired them. Problem solved. For now. But it confirmed what he'd suspected. Whoever wanted Isabella had long reach and deep pockets. They weren't giving up. And now Lena was on their radar. He called her back. The car's gone. Police picked them up. That was fast. Surprise colored her voice. Did you? Let's just say I know people. You're safe tonight. Tonight. She caught the implication. What about tomorrow? Next week? Adriano pinched the bridge of his nose. Good question. One he'd been asking himself since he'd left the diner 3 days ago. The smart move was to pay for her to relocate. New city, new name, get her far away from the mess he'd dragged her into. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she'd protected Isabella without hesitation. Maybe it was the pride in her voice when she'd refused his money at first. Maybe it was just that she represented something rare in his world, genuine goodness without agenda. Whatever it was, Adriano didn't want her to disappear. Come work for me, he said before he could think better of it. What? At my house. I need someone I can trust around Sofia. Someone who isn't part of this world. Someone she already feels safe with. You want me to be her nanny? Lena's laugh was sharp with disbelief. I don't know anything about being a nanny. You know how to keep her safe. You know how to make her feel protected when she's terrified. That's more important than any certification. This is insane. This is practical. You're in danger because you helped my daughter. Working for me puts you under my protection. Nobody touches what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice surprised even him. He cleared his throat. It's a job offer. Good pay. Safe housing. You'd live on the estate. I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's employment. Isabella asks about you every day. She wants to thank you properly. And frankly, she could use someone like you in her life. Adriano didn't add the rest. That his daughter had been quiet since her mother died 2 years ago. That she went through the motions of being happy but never really smiled. That every nanny they'd hired treated her like a paycheck or, worse, like a stepping stone to getting closer to him. But that night at the diner, Isabella had clung to Lena like she'd found something she'd been missing. "I need to think about it," Lena said finally. "Take your time." "But Lena? Those men will try again. The only question is whether you'll be alone when they do." He hung up before she could argue. Lena stared at her phone for a long time after Adriano disconnected. Work for him. Live on his estate. Step fully into a world she'd spent her whole life avoiding. But the alternative was staying here, in this crumbling apartment, waiting for the next black sedan to show up. Waiting for someone to follow her home from work. Waiting for the knock on the door that never came with good news. She looked around her studio. At the stained ceiling and broken stove. At the life she'd built from nothing, brick by careful brick. Was it worth dying for? The business card sat on her nightstand, embossed letters catching the light. Lena picked up her phone. She had a feeling she was about to make either the best or worst decision of her life. Maybe both. The Valente estate sat behind iron gates and stone walls that looked older than the city itself. Lena pressed her face against the car window as they wound up the long driveway, watching manicured lawns give way to gardens that probably required a full-time staff. The house, mansion, really, sprawled across the hilltop like something out of a movie. 3 stories of pale stone and tall windows, with wings that extended in both directions. This was where Isabella lived. Where she'd run from. Where Lena was apparently going to live now too. The driver, a silent man named Rocco who'd picked her up that morning, pulled up to the front entrance. Before Lena could reach for the door handle, it swung open. Isabella stood on the steps, practically vibrating with excitement. "You came. Daddy said you might not, but I knew you would." The girl launched herself forward, wrapping small arms around Lena's waist before she'd even fully exited the car. Something warm and unexpected flooded through Lena's chest. "Hey, kiddo." She hugged her back. "Of course I came. I made you a card. Well, 3 cards. But the first 2 weren't good enough, so I made another one." Isabella grabbed her hand. "Come on, I'll show you your room. It's next to mine, so if you get scared at night you can knock on my door, but Daddy says I'm not supposed to bother you after bedtime unless it's an emergency." Lena let herself be pulled into the house, barely registering the marble floors and crystal chandeliers. She was too focused on this little girl who'd somehow decided they were friends after one terrifying night. The foyer alone was bigger than her entire apartment. "Sophia, let her breathe." Adriano emerged from a side hallway, and Lena's breath caught despite herself. He wore jeans and a black sweater, casual clothes that somehow made him look more dangerous than the suit had. His hair was slightly mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it. Human. He looked human. "Sorry." Isabella didn't sound sorry at all. "But I'm excited. We haven't had anyone nice live here in forever." "What about me?" Adriano raised an eyebrow. "I'm nice. You're my dad. That doesn't count." Isabella tugged Lena toward the stairs. "Come on. Give Ms. Blake a chance to settle in first." Adriano's voice was gentle but firm. "Why don't you finish your homework? I'll bring her up in a few minutes." Sophia's face fell, but she nodded and trudged up the stairs, casting one last hopeful look over her shoulder. Alone with Adriano, Lena suddenly felt the weight of what she'd agreed to. "You can still change your mind," he said quietly. "No judgment. This is a lot." "It is." She met his eyes. "But I meant what I said when I took the job. I don't run from things." Something shifted in his expression. Approval, maybe. Or respect. "Good. Because I need to be honest with you about something." Her stomach tightened. "What? The men who were watching your apartment? They worked for the Romano family. Rival organization. They've been trying to undermine my territory for 6 months." Adriano's jaw clenched. Taking Isabella would have given them leverage. When that failed, they wanted to eliminate loose ends. "Meaning me. Meaning you." He stepped closer. "I'm handling it. But until it's resolved, you're safer here than anywhere else in the city. This house is a fortress." Lena looked around at the elegant space. Fortress. Right. The kind with armed guards she'd spotted on her way in and security cameras at every corner. "What about the job? Am I really here to take care of Sophia, or am I here because I'm a liability you need to contain?" The bluntness of her question seemed to surprise him. Good. She wasn't going to be some helpless damsel who needed protecting without understanding why. Both, Adriano admitted. I won't lie to you. You're here because it's safer. But Isabella needs someone like you. Someone who sees her as a kid, not as Adriano Moretti's daughter. Someone who isn't intimidated by this world. I'm completely intimidated by this world. But you're here anyway. The corner of his mouth lifted. That's the difference. Lena wanted to argue, but Sophia's voice carried down from upstairs. Are you bringing her up or not? Adriano shook his head, a smile breaking through. She's been like this all morning. You'd think we'd told her Christmas was coming early. She's a good kid. The best. His voice went soft. Her mother died 2 years ago. Cancer. Isabella was 5. She's been quiet since then. Careful. Like she's afraid to be too happy. Lena's heart clenched. She knew that fear. Had lived with it herself through 15 different foster homes. But with you, Adriano continued. At the diner? She was just a kid again. Scared, yes, but also trusting. Willing to believe someone would help. He looked at her directly. I haven't seen that in 2 years. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't the dangerous man everyone whispered about. This was a father who'd lost his wife and was terrified of failing his daughter. I'll do my best, Lena said quietly. That's all I'm asking. He led her up the stairs, down a hallway lined with paintings that probably cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. Her room was third on the left, twice the size of her apartment, with a bay window overlooking the gardens and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. The bathrooms through there. The closet's already stocked with basics, but we can go shopping tomorrow if you need anything else. Adriano stood in the doorway. Sophia's room is next door. Mine's at the end of the hall. If you need anything, day or night, just ask. Okay. Lena set down her single duffel bag, everything she owned fit in one bag, feeling wildly out of place. Lena? Adriano paused. Thank you. For taking a chance on this. On us? He left before she could respond. She sat on the bed, which was easily the most comfortable thing she'd ever touched, and tried to process the last week of her life. 7 days ago, she was a waitress living paycheck to paycheck in a moldy apartment. Now she was living in a mansion, working for one of the most powerful men in the city, and somehow becoming part of a grieving family's life. The knock on her door was tentative. Come in, Lena called. Isabella peeked around the corner, holding 3 handmade cards. I didn't know which one to give you, so I brought them all. Lena smiled. Then I'll keep them all. And just like that, her new life began. 3 weeks into her new life, Lena learned that living with Adriano Moretti meant learning to read silences. He didn't talk much. Moved through the house like a ghost most days, always on his phone, always handling business she pretended not to understand. But there were moments, brief flashes, when the mask slipped. Like now. It was past midnight, and Lena had come downstairs for water. She found Adriano in the kitchen, staring at an untouched glass of whiskey. Can't sleep, she asked. He looked up, surprised to see her. Something like that. Lena poured herself water from the fridge, debating whether to leave him alone or take the risk. The risk won. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. But he didn't leave. Didn't tell her to go. She leaned against the counter. Isabella asked me today if her mom would have liked me. Adriano's hand tightened around his glass. What did you say? That anyone who raised a kid that brave and kind must have been pretty incredible. So probably yes. A muscle worked in his jaw. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Camila would have loved you. She had a thing for people who didn't back down. It was the first time he'd said his wife's name around her. Lena treaded carefully. How long were you married? 8 years. Met her at a charity gala. She was there protesting outside. A ghost of a smile. Told me I was everything wrong with the world. I told her she was right. She married me anyway. Sounds like she knew what she wanted. She did. Right up until the end. Adriano finally took a drink. Cancer doesn't care how stubborn you are. Doesn't care how much money you throw at it. Doesn't care that you'd burn the world down if it meant 5 more minutes with the person you love. The rawness in his voice made Lena's chest ache. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything. He set down the glass harder than necessary. Isabella was 5. 5 years old and watching her mother disappear piece by piece. Nothing I did could fix it. Lena understood powerlessness. Had felt it every time social services moved her to a new home, every time she'd aged out of the system with nothing but a garbage bag of belongings. You stayed, she said quietly. You didn't run. That matters. Adriano looked at her like she'd said something profound instead of obvious. You talk like someone who knows. Foster care. 15 different homes before I aged out at 18. Lena shrugged. I learned early that staying is harder than leaving. Most people choose to leave. Something shifted in Adriano's expression. Recognition. Understanding. Like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. Is that why you helped Sofia? Because you knew what it felt like to be scared and alone? Maybe. Lena met his eyes. Or maybe I just couldn't walk past a kid who needed help. Does the reason matter? To me it does. He moved closer, and suddenly the kitchen felt smaller. You could have called the police. Could have handed her off to someone else. But you stayed with her. Made her feel safe. Asked her about her father before assuming the worst. That's just being decent. No. Adriano's voice went soft. That's rare. The air between them felt charged. Dangerous. Lena should step back, put distance between herself and this man who was her employer, who lived in a world she didn't understand, who could never be anything more than complicated. She didn't move. Daddy? They both jumped. Isabella stood in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit, hair mussed from sleep. Hey, baby. Adriano's transformation was instant, from vulnerable to protective in a heartbeat. What's wrong? Bad dream. Sofia's voice was small. About the men again. Adriano crossed to her, but Isabella looked past him to Lena. Can you stay with me? Just for a little bit? Lena's heart squeezed. Of course. She followed Isabella upstairs, aware of Adriano watching them go. The girls' room was pink and white, filled with books and toys that looked barely touched. Like a showroom instead of a child's space. Isabella climbed into bed, and Lena sat on the edge. Want to talk about it? Not really. Isabella hugged her rabbit tighter. I just don't want to be alone. You're not alone. Not anymore. Promise? The weight of that question settled over Lena. This kid had lost her mother. Had almost been taken by dangerous men. Had learned too young that safety was temporary. I promise, Lena said, and meant it. She stayed until Sofia's breathing evened out, then stood to leave. Lena? The voice was sleepy. My mom used to sing to me. Before she got too sick. Do you want me to sing? I don't remember the songs anymore. Sofia's eyes were wet. I tried really hard, but I can't remember. Lena's throat tightened. She didn't know Camila's songs, couldn't give this girl back what she'd lost. But she could give her something new. She sang softly. An old lullaby from one of her foster homes, the only one she'd been in long enough to feel almost safe. Her voice wasn't great, but Isabella smiled. That's pretty. Yeah? Yeah. Isabella yawned. Will you teach it to me? So I don't forget. I'll teach you. Lena smoothed back her hair. Sleep now. She made it to the hallway before the tears came. Not sad tears, exactly. Something more complicated. Grief for a little girl learning to move forward. Relief that she could help. Fear that she was getting too attached. Adriano waited at the end of the hall. She's asleep, Lena said, wiping her eyes quickly. He nodded. Didn't comment on the tears. Thank you. For being what she needs. She's easy to care about. So are you. The words hung between them. Lena didn't know how to respond, wasn't sure she should. Good night, Adriano. Good night, Lena. She closed her bedroom door and leaned against it, wondering when exactly she'd stopped being just an employee and started becoming part of something bigger. Something that felt dangerously close to family. And in his own room, Adriano sat on the edge of his bed and admitted something he'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. He was falling for the woman who'd saved his daughter. And he had absolutely no idea what to do about it. The threat came on a Tuesday afternoon while Isabella was at school. Lena was in the garden with a book when Adriano found her, his face carved from stone. She knew that expression now. Something had gone wrong. Pack a bag. His voice was clipped. We're leaving in 20 minutes. What happened? The Romanos made their move. Hit 3 of my warehouses simultaneously. It's a distraction. His jaw clenched. Which means they're planning something bigger. Lena's blood went cold. Sophia. Rocco's picking her up from school now. We're taking her to a safe house upstate until this is over. She was on her feet before he finished speaking. I'll get my things. Lena. He caught her arm. This isn't your fight. I can have someone take you somewhere safe, somewhere separate from. No. She met his eyes. Isabella needs familiar faces right now. She needs to feel safe. I'm coming. Adriano stared at her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her expression made him nod. 10 minutes. Only essentials. They were on the road within 30 minutes. 2 cars, Adriano driving with Isabella and Lena in his SUV, 3 armed guards following in a second vehicle. The city fell away behind them, replaced by highways and then country roads that wound through forests going amber with autumn. Isabella sat between them in the back, unusually quiet. She'd asked only one question when Rocco brought her from school, "Are the bad men coming again?" Adriano had answered honestly. "Maybe. But I won't let them near you." Now she leaned against Lena's side, small fingers wrapped around her hand. Trust. Complete and absolute. It terrified Lena how much she'd come to care about this kid in 6 weeks. The safe house was actually a cabin, isolated, rustic, surrounded by woods with only one access road. Defensible. Adriano did a full sweep before letting them enter, checking windows and exits with military precision. There's food in the pantry. Generator in back if the power goes out. He turned to his guards. Perimeter check every hour. Nobody gets within a mile of this place without me knowing. You're leaving? Sophia's voice cracked. Adriano knelt in front of her. Just for a little while. I need to handle some business. You always say that. Tears welled in her eyes. And then something bad happens. The pain that crossed Adriano's face was visceral. He pulled Isabella close, and Lena saw his hands shake as they smoothed her hair. I know, baby. I know. But this time I'm making sure of it. This time I'm ending it. He pulled back to look at her. Lena's going to stay with you. The guards are outside. You're safe here. What if you don't come back? The question hung in the air like poison. I'll always come back to you. Adriano's voice was fierce. Always. You're my whole world, Sophia. Nothing changes that. Isabella buried her face in his chest. Lena looked away, throat tight, giving them privacy for this moment. Be good for Lena. Adriano kissed the top of Sophia's head. I'll be back before you know it. He stood, and his eyes found Lena's. Can I talk to you? Outside? She followed him onto the porch. Sunset painted the trees gold and crimson, beautiful and melancholy. Adriano stood at the railing, hands gripped so tight his knuckles were white. If something happens. Don't. Lena moved beside him. Don't say it. I have to. He turned to face her. If something happens to me, there's a lawyer. Documents. Everything Isabella needs. But more than that, she'll need someone who actually cares about her. Not about the money or the name. Just her. Adriano. I'm asking you to stay. No matter what happens. Promise me you'll take care of her. Lena's heart hammered. You're coming back. Promise me anyway. She saw her reflection in his dark eyes. Saw the desperation and fear he was trying so hard to hide. This man who terrified half the city was terrified himself, not of dying, but of leaving his daughter alone. I promise, she whispered. Something released in Adriano's expression. He reached up, and his hand cupped her face with unexpected gentleness. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. You walked into my life during the worst night I'd had in years. Kept my daughter safe when I couldn't. Gave her something to smile about again. His voice dropped. You gave me something to hope for too. Lena's breath caught. Adriano. I know. Wrong time. Wrong everything. A sad smile. But if I don't come back, I needed you to know. You're coming back, she said fiercely. You promised Sophia. And you keep your promises. He leaned forward, and for one impossible moment Lena thought he might kiss her. Instead, his forehead touched hers, and they stood there breathing the same air, sharing space that felt both enormous and infinitely small. Take care of her, he whispered. Take care of yourself. Adriano pulled away, and the loss of his warmth felt like winter arriving early. He walked to his car without looking back, probably because he couldn't. Lena watched until the taillights disappeared through the trees. Inside, Isabella had climbed onto the couch, still clutching her rabbit. Is he going to die? The bluntness of the question stole Lena's breath. No. He's going to be fine. That's what they told me about Mommy. Sophia's voice was hollow. And she died anyway. Lena sat beside her, pulling the girl into her arms. Your dad is strong. Smart. And he has every reason in the world to come home. What if that's not enough? It was a question Lena couldn't answer. So instead, she held Isabella while the girl cried, and tried to ignore the fear clawing at her own chest. Because somewhere in the last 6 weeks, Adriano Moretti had stopped being her employer. He'd become something else entirely. Something important. Something that terrified her because she'd never let anyone matter this much before. Outside, darkness fell. Guards patrolled the perimeter. And 2 women who'd both lost too much already waited for a man who might not come back. But hours later, as Isabella finally fell asleep against her shoulder, Lena made herself a different promise. If Adriano Moretti didn't come back, she'd make damn sure the people who took him regretted it. Some debts went deeper than gratitude. Some debts became family. 36 hours passed without a word from Adriano. Lena kept Isabella distracted with card games and cooking projects, but the girl's eyes kept drifting to the windows. Watching. Waiting. The guards changed shifts but revealed nothing, their faces professional masks. By the second night, Lena's nerves were frayed to nothing. She'd put Isabella to bed an hour ago and was pacing the small living room when headlights cut through the darkness. Her heart stopped. Then the sound of car doors, footsteps on gravel, and the door opened. Adriano stood in the doorway, and Lena had never been so relieved to see anyone in her entire life. He was exhausted, bruised along one cheekbone, his shirt wrinkled and stained with what might have been blood. But he was alive. Is she asleep? His voice was rough, like he'd been shouting. Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. Adriano crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. She went without thinking, her hands gripping his jacket, feeling his heart hammer against her cheek. He was solid and warm and real. I'm okay, he murmured into her hair. It's over. I'm okay. What happened? Later. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his hands framing her face. Right now I just need. Whatever he needed, he found in her eyes. Adriano kissed her. It wasn't gentle. Wasn't careful. It was desperation and relief and everything they'd been holding back for weeks crashing together all at once. Lena kissed him back with equal fervor, her fingers threading through his hair, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adriano rested his forehead against hers. I shouldn't have done that, he said. Probably not. You work for me. You're here because of Sophia. This complicates everything. I know. And I don't care. His thumb traced her bottom lip. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night at the diner. The way you looked at my daughter like she mattered. The way you look at me like I'm more than what I do. Lena's heart thundered. You are more than what you do. Most people don't see it that way. I'm not most people. No. Adriano smiled, and it transformed his face. You're really not. He kissed her again, slower this time, and Lena let herself fall into it. Let herself feel everything she'd been denying. Want. Need. Hope. Things she'd trained herself not to feel because feeling meant risk, and risk meant loss. But Adriano was worth the risk. A small voice from the stairs shattered the moment. Daddy? They broke apart. Isabella stood halfway down, rubbing her eyes, hair a mess. When she saw Adriano, her face lit up like sunrise. You came back. Of course I did. Adriano caught her as she launched herself down the remaining steps. Told you I would. Isabella wrapped her arms around his neck, and Adriano held her like she was the most precious thing in the universe. Which, Lena realized, she was. I was scared, Isabella whispered. I thought maybe. I know, baby. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. He carried her to the couch, keeping her close. It's over. The bad men aren't coming anymore. Really? Hope and disbelief warred in Sophia's voice. Really? I made sure of it. Adriano's tone left no room for doubt. Whatever he'd done, however he'd ended the threat, it was permanent. Isabella noticed Lena then, and something knowing flickered in her 7-year-old eyes. Were you scared too? Terrified, Lena admitted. But he came back. Isabella looked between them. And now we're all together again. The simple way she said it, like they were already a unit, already a family, made Lena's throat tight. Yeah, Adriano said softly, his eyes on Lena. Now we're all together. They stayed up another hour, Isabella refusing to let Adriano out of her sight. She fell asleep curled against him, and he carried her upstairs with Lena following. Will you stay? Isabella mumbled as Adriano tucked her in. Both of you? Adriano glanced at Lena. She nodded and settled into the chair by Sophia's bed while Adriano sat on the floor, his back against the wall. Within minutes, Isabella was deeply asleep, her breathing even and peaceful. Tell me what happened, Lena said quietly. Adriano was silent for a long moment. We found their operation. All of it. Evidence, money, the people who ordered the hit on Sophia. His voice went cold. I gave them a choice. Leave the city permanently or face consequences. And? They chose poorly. He looked at her. I won't apologize for what I did. They threatened my daughter. There's no coming back from that. Lena should have been horrified. Should have been afraid of this man who spoke so casually about violence and consequences. But all she felt was relief that Isabella was safe. That Adriano had come back. Maybe that made her complicit. Maybe she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Or maybe she'd just finally found where she belonged. I'm not asking you to apologize, she said. I'm asking if it's really over. It's over. The Romanos have been dismantled. Other families got the message. Adriano stood and crossed to her, offering his hand. We can go home. Home. The word settled over her like a blanket. Lena took his hand and let him pull her up. They stood close in the darkness, with Isabella breathing softly behind them and the future suddenly uncertain but full of possibility. What happens now? She whispered. Adriano brushed a strand of hair from her face. I guess we figure it out. If you want to. I want to. The words came easier than she expected. This, you, Sophia, it's not what I planned. But it's what I want. Even knowing what I am? What I do. I know who you are. Lena touched his face, feeling the bruise forming along his cheekbone. A man who loves his daughter more than anything. Who kept his promise to come back. Who gave me a family when I'd never had one. Lena. I'm not naive. I know your world is dangerous. But I grew up in danger too. Just a different kind. She met his eyes. The difference is, this time I'm not alone. Adriano pulled her close, and they stood there in the quiet, holding each other while Isabella slept and the darkness outside slowly gave way to dawn. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Lena felt safe. Not because of walls or guards or money. Because she'd finally found people who chose her back. 3 months later, Lena woke to sunlight streaming through windows that no longer felt foreign. The estate had stopped being Adriano's house somewhere along the way. Now it was just home. Her home. Their home. She found Isabella in the kitchen, attempting to make pancakes. Flour dusted her nose, and batter dripped from the spoon in her hand. Need help? Lena asked. Yes, please. Isabella grinned. Daddy's still sleeping, and I wanted to surprise him. They worked together, Isabella chattering about school and her friends and the book she was reading. So different from the terrified girl who'd run through a storm. Time and safety had given her back her childhood, piece by piece. Adriano appeared 20 minutes later, hair still damp from the shower, and stopped in the doorway. What's all this? Surprise. Isabel bounced on her toes. We made breakfast. I can see that. He crossed to kiss Sophia's head, then pulled Lena close for a proper kiss. Morning. Morning. She smiled against his lips, still getting used to this, the casual affection, the ease of it all. Isabella made exaggerated gagging sounds. Gross. You're like those people in movies. You'll understand when you're older, Adriano said. That's what adults always say when they don't have a real answer. Isabella rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. They ate together at the kitchen island, comfortable and chaotic in the way families were. Lena had to remind herself sometimes that this was real. That she was allowed to have this. After breakfast, Adriano pulled her aside while Isabella ran upstairs to get ready for her friend's birthday party. I need to talk to you about something, he said. Lena's stomach tightened. Those words never led anywhere good. Okay. Come with me. He led her to his office, a room she rarely entered, where he conducted business she mostly didn't ask about. But today, he opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. I've been working on this for a while. Adriano handed it to her. Look at it before you say anything. Lena opened the folder. Inside were legal documents. Adoption papers. Her name on every line next to Sophia's. Her hands started shaking. I know we haven't talked about this specifically, Adriano said quietly. And I know 3 months isn't that long. But Isabella asked me last week when you were going to officially be her mom. Tears blurred Lena's vision. She asked that? She feels safer with you than anyone else. Happier. Like she can just be a kid. His voice was gentle. You've given her something I couldn't, the freedom to heal without pressure. To trust again. Adriano. I'm not pressuring you. If you need time, we have time. But I wanted you to know that this is what we both want. A real family. Legal and permanent. And Lena kissed him, hard and desperate, the folder falling forgotten to the desk. When she pulled back, tears were streaming down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. Relief and joy flooded Adriano's expression. He cupped her face, thumbs wiping away her tears. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She laughed through her tears. That little girl upstairs, she's already mine. Has been since that first night. I just didn't know I was allowed to want this. You're allowed. Adriano pulled her close. You're allowed to want everything, Lena. To have everything. They stood there wrapped in each other until Sophia's voice echoed from upstairs. Are you guys kissing again? We're going to be late. Adriano laughed against Lena's hair. We should probably tell her. Now? Why wait? They found Isabella in her room, struggling with the zipper on her dress. Lena helped while Adriano leaned against the doorframe, watching them with an expression that was pure contentment. Sophia, Lena said carefully. Your dad and I wanted to talk to you about something. Sophia's eyes went wide. Are you getting married? We're not, that's not. Lena looked to Adriano for help. We're working up to that, he said, amused. But first, we wanted to ask you something important. What? Lena took a breath. How would you feel if I officially became your mom? Legally. Permanently. Isabella went very still. Her eyes darted between them, like she was afraid this might be a trick. Really? Like, for real for real? For real, Adriano confirmed. So you'd stay forever? Even if something bad happens? Lena's heart broke and healed at the same time. Even if something bad happens. Nothing could make me leave you, Sophia. Isabella launched herself at Lena so hard they both stumbled. Yes. I want that. I want you to be my mom. Okay then. Lena held her tight, crying again. Okay. Can I call you mom now? The question punched through every defense Lena had left. If you want to. I want to. Isabella pulled back, beaming through her own tears. Mom. The word felt like coming home. Adriano wrapped his arms around both of them, and they stood there in a group embrace that felt like a promise. Like a beginning. We're going to be a real family, Isabella said, wonder in her voice. We already are, Adriano told her. This just makes it official. Later, after they dropped Isabella at the birthday party and were driving back home, Adriano reached over and took Lena's hand. Thank you, he said. For what? For saving my daughter. For saving me. He brought her hand to his lips. For choosing us when you could have walked away 100 different times. I couldn't walk away. Lena squeezed his hand. You two are the best thing that ever happened to me. The only real family I've ever had. Then we're even. His voice was rough. Because you're the best thing that's happened to us too. They drove in comfortable silence, the city passing by outside. Lena watched the familiar streets and thought about how much had changed in 4 months. She'd gone from a struggling waitress in a moldy apartment to a mother. A partner. Part of something bigger than herself. All because she'd opened a door on a stormy night and chosen kindness over safety. Some risks, she thought, were worth taking. And some families chose each other. 6 months after the adoption was finalized, Adriano proposed on the anniversary of the night they met. Not with diamonds or grand gestures. Just the 3 of them in the diner where it all began, Maples, with its faded pink sign and cracked vinyl booths. This place is kind of dumpy, Isabella whispered, looking around. It's perfect, Lena said, tears already forming. Because she understood what Adriano was doing. Honoring the beginning. The moment everything changed. He got down on one knee right there in the booth, and pulled out a simple platinum band. I know we've done everything backward. Family first, forever second. But I want to make it official. Will you marry me? Yes. Lena didn't need to think. Absolutely yes. Isabella cheered so loud the 3 other customers turned to look. Hank, still working the counter after all this time, grinned and gave them a thumbs up. The wedding was small. Just close friends and Isabella as flower girl, beaming in a dress she'd picked herself. Adriano's business associates were conspicuously absent. This wasn't about power or connections. This was about family. Lena wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers. When she walked down the aisle, Adriano's eyes were wet, and that made her love him even more. I never thought I'd get this, he whispered when she reached him. A second chance. Someone who loves me and my daughter equally. You don't get second chances, Lena whispered back. You make them. We made this. The ceremony was short. The vows were simple. And when Adriano kissed her, Isabella announced loudly that now they were a real forever family, which made everyone laugh and cry at the same time. Life settled into a rhythm after that. Lena officially left her job at the diner, though she visited Hank sometimes just to catch up. Her old apartment had been donated to a women's shelter, a way of giving back, of remembering where she'd come from. She started volunteering with foster kids, using her own experience to help children who felt invisible. Adriano supported it fully, even providing funding for programs she developed. Turns out money could do good things when the right person directed it. Isabella thrived. Her nightmares faded to occasional bad dreams, manageable with comfort and reassurance. She made friends easily now, joined the school drama club, and talked constantly about everything and nothing. The quiet, careful child was gone, replaced by someone confident and loved. One evening, nearly a year after the wedding, Lena found Adriano in his office staring at a photograph. Camila. Beautiful and vibrant, frozen in time. Adriano didn't hide her pictures. Didn't pretend she'd never existed. He'd loved his first wife deeply, and that love was part of who he was. You okay? Lena asked from the doorway. He looked up and smiled. Yeah. Just thinking about how she'd react to all this. Lena came into the room, perching on the desk beside him. What do you think she'd say? That she told me so. Adriano laughed softly. Camila always said I needed someone who'd call me on my bullshit. Someone who wouldn't be impressed by the power or the money. Sounds like she knew you well. She did. He set down the photo gently. I think she'd like you. The way you love Sophia. The way you keep me human. I'm not replacing her. I know. And that's why this works. Adriano pulled Lena into his lap. You're not Camila. You're Lena. You brought something different to our lives. Something we desperately needed. You gave me something too. She rested her head against his. A home. A daughter. A purpose beyond just surviving. They sat in comfortable silence until Isabella appeared at the door. Mom, can you help me with my homework? Mom. The word still sent warmth through Lena's chest every single time. Of course. Be right there. Isabella ran off, and Adriano kissed Lena's temple. Thank you. For what? For being exactly who you are. For staying when it got complicated. For loving us enough to become part of this messy, imperfect family. Best decision I ever made, Lena said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. 2 years after that stormy night, Lena stood in the garden watching Isabella play with the neighborhood kids. The girl was 9 now, all long legs and bright laughter. No trace remained of the terrified child who'd stumbled into a diner begging for help. Adriano came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Penny, for your thoughts. Just thinking about how different everything is. Lena leaned into him. 2 years ago, I was alone. Working myself to death. Convinced that was all I deserved. And now? Now I have everything I never knew I wanted. She turned in his arms. A daughter who calls me mom. A husband who loves me. A life that feels real and solid and mine. Ours, Adriano corrected. It's ours. Ours, she agreed. Isabella ran over, breathless and happy. Can Emma stay for dinner? Sure, Lena said. But you need to clean your room first. Deal. Isabella grabbed her friend's hand and ran off. Adriano shook his head, amused. She's got your negotiating skills. Good. She'll need them with you as a father. They laughed, comfortable and content in the space they'd carved out together. A space built on trust and love and the kind of family you choose rather than the one you're born into. That night, after Isabella was asleep and Emma had been picked up, Lena and Adriano sat on their back patio watching stars emerge. Do you ever think about that night? Lena asked. The call you got? How different things could have been. Every day. Adriano threaded his fingers through hers. If you'd turned Isabella away. If I'd been 5 minutes later. If any single thing had gone differently. But it didn't. No. It didn't. He kissed her hand. One act of kindness from a stranger changed everything. Saved my daughter. Saved me. Saved me too, Lena said quietly. I just didn't know I needed saving. They sat together in the darkness, two people who'd found each other in the middle of chaos and built something beautiful from it. A family forged not by blood, but by choice. Not by perfection, but by perseverance. Not by fate, but by the simple decision to open a door on a stormy night and choose compassion over fear. Sometimes the best things in life start with the worst moments. Sometimes the family you need finds you when you least expect it. And sometimes, a single phone call at midnight changes everything. Adriano squeezed Lena's hand. She squeezed back. And somewhere inside, their daughter slept peacefully, dreaming of a future that was safe and warm and filled with love. The kind of future she deserved. The kind of future they all deserved. The kind of future they'd built together. And just like Marcus Valente's midnight call that changed everything, your support changes everything for us too. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story and want more, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. The end.